Hi everyone, I sincerely hope you're well again. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm back with a demo looking into the ins and outs, in a metaphorical and literal sense, of the Roland Blues Cube Artist combo amp. Fair warning, this is a pretty long but hopefully interesting video. I got a bit carried away. I hope you enjoy this in-depth look into one of my favourite ever guitar amps. I bought this amp back in 2015 after hearing a lot of impressive reviews from revered guitarists like Eric Johnson, Kirk Fletcher, Robin Ford, Jeff Skunk Baxter, the list goes on. Hearing from each of them that this solid-state amp was not only incredibly convincing of a valve amp tone, but also had the practicalities of being lightweight, durable, and having great input and output flexibility, it ticked all sorts of boxes for me as a gigging guitarist. After trying one out, I, and the amp, were very much sold. It's at this point I'm going to assume that most of you are following what I'm saying with regards to terminology about the amp, but let me know down in the comment section if you'd like me to do a separate video that talks about the different types of guitar amps, because I'd be very happy to do that. There are also a plethora of other videos on different YouTube channels that go into this in detail, so if you're craving to immediately know more, I'd recommend a quick visit to another channel like That Pedal Show. Those guys are great and I've learned a lot through them. But for now, I mentioned that this is a solid state amp and it does a great job of replicating the tone and feel of a vintage valve amp. It seems for all intents and purposes, and to put it bluntly, to be aiming for sort of a 50s Fender Blues Deluxe vibe, even right down to its aesthetic. And I read that it was apparently designed by those that favoured the sound of a 6L6 tube power section. Going through its custom-designed 1x12 speaker, the circuitry uses technology that Roland have dubbed tube logic to achieve the way the preamp gets progressively grittier as you turn it up. To see what I mean, check this out. And that is just the clean channel. Not only does the preamp gain behave as you'd expect from a vintage valve amp, but it responds really well to one's playing dynamics as well. It just breathes like it should. It's very pleasant to play through. Now for me, it's all about the drive channel. And before you all start saying, of course it is, how else are you going to rock out? Let me explain fully. Yes, you can get an excellent and pleasantly honky mid-gain tone from the drive channel at full whack. But for those of you looking to raise hell or get that perfect intense metal tone, I'm afraid this amp is probably not for you. I instead like to focus on how well the amp cleans up as you turn down the volume on your guitar or play softer. Almost an opposite of what I love about the clean channel. Like it's meeting harmoniously halfway between the point of maximum gain on the clean channel and minimum gain on the drive. If that makes sense. I have a particularly favourite guitar and amp pairing I love to use. It involves this amp and this guitar. There's going to be a whole video on this guitar at some point too, but for now, let me just say that these two are a match made in heaven. This guitar has its own mojo going on for starters, but the Blues Cube seems to coax it out even more. I've been known to sit and play with this combo for a couple of hours at a time just because of how much I like the sound. But back to the point at hand. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. as if the tonal flexibility on either channel wasn't enough, you then have a boost and tone switch for each of them. I think the tone switch was originally intended to compensate the difference between the sound of brighter guitars like this Strat or something warmer like this Epiphone. But for me, I just like the sound when I leave it on all the time for both channels. The boost switch, though, adds in a lovely little kick, as you can hear. And again, my personal preference is to leave it on all the time, but only for the drive channel. I get all the low to mid gain flexibility I need on the drive channel by manipulating the volume control on my guitar. Side note: don't be afraid to use the volume control on your guitar, people. Imagine if you spoke on 10 all the time. It's all about your dynamics. But back to it. Here's the kicker, people. Yes, you have a clean channel. Yes, you have a drive channel. But what does it sound like when we mix them together? Let's find out with dual tone mode. I think I once heard this explained very well by a Roland engineer who said that dual tone mode is essentially about mixing the clarity and attack of the clean channel and the grit and sustain of the drive. It's a wonderful mix and a great idea. So a little about the input section. On the top panel, we can see on the left a low and high input. For those that don't know, these inputs have different impedances. The reason you might want to go for the low input is if you have a guitar with quite high output pickups, whether they're active or just hot passive pickups, which would then drive the amp harder than you may be after. So if you, say, want to chase those soft jazz tones with a lot of headroom and a cleaner sound, that's what I'd recommend. The high input, as you might have guessed, is probably more suited to guitars with low output pickups, like your typical Strat or Telly. It just means you're still hitting the front end of the amp with a healthy amount of signal to make it respond as it should. Or, if you're so inclined, you can use the high input to overdrive the amp more, as there'll be less headroom on tap. Like most amps as standard, this one has a 3-band EQ for your lows, your mids and your highs. It's worth remembering that in the case of the majority of guitar amps and effects, the optimum settings as the manufacturer intended are found at their neutral point, or halfway up in this case. But there is nothing stopping you from adjusting to taste, of course. The presence control, which as in most amps adjusts the upper mid-range frequencies, is a welcome addition to the EQ aspect of the amp. especially for someone like me who enjoys a nice bit of sparkle in their tone. Here's a question for you folks. Do you like reverb? If the answer is yes, great. This amp has an amazing one, ranging from subtle ambience to a glorious cavernous space. And to complement this wonderful sound, a really lovely tremolo with a tap tempo switch to alter the speed. All the choppy goodness one needs. The next awesome feature that is really worth talking about is the variable power control switch located on the far right of the top panel. This seriously handy feature allows you to control the power output rating of the amp, and the reason for this is simple. In your good old-fashioned valve amps, the output volume has a massive effect on the overall sound. If you push the amp harder by whacking up the volume, you then increase elements of what is known as sag, compression, and harmonic richness, which can all be very desirable as guitar tones go. But here's the thing, to get that juicy tone, you have to be loud, very loud. The brilliance of the Blues Cube's power control is that you can get all this wonderful tone, but not necessarily at a volume that's going to make your neighbours kick down your door. It can go from a very respectable 80 watts right down to 0.5. I myself have never gone above 45 at a gig because the amp is just so damn loud, but only if you want it to be. That's the beauty of it. The good, but fairly old news now, is that Roland and subsequently Boss amps have included this feature on their newer models, which is a great thing. What's that, you say? Consistently brilliant sound at manageable volumes? I'll take that. Finally, just a brief overview of the outputs on the back panel. From left to right, we have the foot switch section, which allows for switchable control of either the tremolo and effects loop, the channel selection and dual tone mode, or an output for the compatible GA FC foot controller. Then we have a handy USB recording out for direct-to-software recording, which means no messing around with mics if you don't want to or don't have any. A headphone output for the ultimate quiet practice. Line out for a direct feed to a PA or other output source. In my personal experience of using the line out from time to time, I've noticed that there's a bit of a drop in the high end, so bear that in mind for whatever your application is, if it's going out through a PA for example. But also bear in mind that this may work in your favour. It's often the bright high frequencies that come across as a bit harsh at high volumes to an audience. And lastly, the effects loop. Forgive me if I'm teaching some of you to suck eggs here. It allows you to place certain parts of your signal chain, like your guitar effects pedals, before or after the preamp. Once again, this is a topic for another video, but just as a quick example, I would tend to place my drive or gain pedals before the preamp, and then any time-based effects like delay or reverb through the effects loop. Side note, this amp takes pedals beautifully, but unfortunately I don't have my old pedal board around to demo this right now, so hopefully I'll get around to that one day and show you guys what I mean. So in summary, my opinion of this amp is very high. For the longest time I thought I'd have to go and get old vintage amps and other gear to get the tones I was after, but I was happily proved wrong several times over the last few years. I'm now fully receptive and interested in all the guitar tech that's being released each year. If you enjoyed this demo, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop and spot any new videos coming out as and when they do. As I mentioned in my last video though, it's not all about gear demos and reviews, but a wide range of topics that I've acquired knowledge of over years of being a musician. So stick around, and if you're interested in seeing me talk anything music, production or gear based that's on your mind, please leave a comment down below. Similarly, if you have any questions about this particular video and the amp I just demoed, ask away and I'd be very happy to answer. Until next time folks, stay safe, stay positive and stay musical.